In this video, I want to show you Figma and how we can use it to prototype our website. So this is Figma, this is what you normally see, and we'll start once you've created an account by clicking New File. Now, what we want to do is basically make our homepage on a mobile screen. And the first thing to do that is to start out with a frame. A frame is basically our artboard in Illustrator or our system where we are going to build that up. And the idea with the frame is that we can choose from a number of preset frame sizes. Note that these don't specifically mean anything. The only thing that it means is that it has this dimension for an iPhone 8 or for a tablet or for a desktop. But you can always pick one and then change the frame later if you want. So I'm going to design it for an iPhone X, like this. And what I want to do here is I want to immediately rename this frame. So here in my sidebar, I can see the name here, and I can right click and choose rename like this, or I can just double click here and call this homepage. So this is what all of the contents of my frame are going to be in here. And this is going to be a really simple homepage, starting out with a header, an intro section, a gallery, and then a footer, sort of like the site we made before. So my main tool is going to be my rectangle. Note that every time I click here, I have these shortcuts that I can use. So I can also type R to immediately get a rectangle here, like this. And then I can drag this rectangle here and make it the size that I want. So let's say that it has to be 50 pixels high. And imagine that I'm not exactly correct here, so I made it 52 pixels, for example. What I can always do is here in the sidebar, change these values directly. So I can either enter and then type a value here, or I can drag this number like this and then actually drag that out any way I want. So this is 50 pixels high. Right, and then that's going to be my header, so it's probably going to have the name here. Let's call it portfolio. And just as before, as I click here, I get all the properties for my text. The most important one maybe is font, because it's an important one once you're starting to talk about websites and typefaces, is that you can't use every font around. You have to use the web fonts, so the ones that you have a license for or ones that you've created yourself. Now, Figma makes this easy because it allows you to have direct access to Google Fonts. The only issue is that you don't know what any of these mean because you have no clue. So the best thing to do is to go to Google Fonts and then pick a font from there, the one that you like, or pick multiple ones. So for example, I might choose a display font here to actually set my header in. And I like this one. So this one's called Bolby1, and that should be here. So if I click here and I type Bolby1, right, then I get that font here. Nice. And I can change the font size to make it a bit bigger and align it here. You see that you get these easy handles here. On the other side of our homepage, we want to do our hamburger menu, but we'll do that in a later video. Below that, we're going to make our first section. And the idea here is that it's just going to be a section that has a certain height. So basically the height of these, the entire screen maybe, because that's going to fill up this, this image here. And so what we want to do here is fill that up with a random image. And we can use a service called Unsplash to provide an image for us. Now, Unsplash provides free images that you can use for any project, even commercial ones. So this is really useful to have. But the nice thing about Unsplash, it directly integrates into Figma as well. So if you go to Figma Plugins, so from your main page, go to Plugins, then you can search for Unsplash. Here it's on popular, and then you can install it. And what that's going to do is whenever I have a square like this, I can click here, go to Plugins, Unsplash, and then it's saying running Unsplash, and now I can choose either a random image or an image from some kind of category, for example, nature. And that's going to insert a random image around nature. And let's see, okay, I sort of like that. So I'm done here. And you see that it has added this fill color here. Now, if you want to use your own image, you can do that as well. So then you would click this, you would choose image here, and now you can choose an image here. So you can upload an image that you like. So for example, I have some demo images somewhere in my mess of a desktop. I'm not sure what this one is. Okay, so these are lemons for some reason. And then I get rid of that one, and now I get my lemons. And so if I click on this image, I should be able to also change how the image fills. So I can either fit it or crop it or tile it. In this case, I just want to fill it. Okay. So those are the two options that I can use to either use my own images or use images from Unsplash. And then I'm going to add a title here. Hi, I'm Frederick. And maybe this one I want to have in white, so I can just click the fill icon and choose a color. I can also use a color picker here to pick a color that I want, if that works better for me. Maybe make it a bit bigger. Note that if I make it bigger here, it doesn't automatically change the size of the text inside. It just changes the size of the text box. So that means that the text will wrap. So to change the size, I actually have to use this control here. Maybe this is a bit too big. So let's say 30 pixels, something like this. And maybe if I want, because I can't read it very much, I can add a effect here. I can click plus. That allows me to add a drop shadow. I can click the little sun here to say what's the blur value, how far does it go in the X and Y direction. So you can sort of drag the blur either below or above. It's sort of very hard to see here. The opacity of the blur, the color, you can change all that if you want. So you can make it a blue, very strong blur, or just make it black if you want. Okay, now what's nice about all of this is that once you're coding your website using CSS, you can actually click this element, go to the code tab, and then actually see all the parameters. Now, I wouldn't worry too much about these top ones because these are absolute positions and we don't really want to use those. But we are interested in the font family, the font size, the line height, the color, and especially here the text shadow, because that's a kind of a difficult one to reproduce just by hand or by looking at it. So it's easy to just copy and paste from here. Cool. Now, if I want to do the next section, I run into a problem, of course, because my page is only goes this far, right? So this is the size of my iPhone screen. So what do I have to do below? Well, what I can do is this artboard, as I said before, it's now modeled on an iPhone X, but I can just drag it down to make the page longer, and that allows me to scroll the page. So when I go into preview mode, I can actually see how the page scrolls, and I'll show that in a minute by adding another gallery. So I'm going to write the word gallery here. I'm going to align that nicely here. I can also use text align center, so that it's actually in the center. So if my text now becomes longer or shorter, it's always centered. I'm going to change the fill color a little bit, so it's a bit less in your face. And then I'm going to add another rectangle. Note that I don't choose an image here, although I can. I'm just choosing a rectangle where the image should be, which is here. And then I'm going to fill that up. Now, here I don't want the full width of this image. Instead, what I want is I want to have it 10 pixels from the side. So I'm going to type 10. And then also 10 pixels from the other side. But instead of just typing or calculating this size, I can just say, well, the width is 375, minus 10 for the left side and minus 10 for the right side. And so that will give me this value without actually having to do the calculation, although it's not so difficult in this case. And the height probably is like 200 pixels. So again, we can choose a fill here. So we can go to plugins, Unsplash, choose an image. Again, maybe nature. Let's see. That's a bit too aggressive, maybe. Plugins, Unsplash, color film. Okay, cool. And for each image, I also want to add a little title maybe for the work. So this will be called Fireworks. And the idea here is that this one will be at the side. I'm going to use a different font for this one, make it a bit smaller, like 12 pixels. Align that to this side, and then to the other side, what I want to do here is I want to have the year, for example, that I made the work, 2018, for example. Note that here I want to choose right align and then align it here to the right as well. So they're nicely aligned. It's not the best design ever, but it's just to show you a point in a minute. Okay, cool. And then maybe I want to do a next work. And note that I'm just designing it as you normally would, which means that I'm not really taking care of groups and things like that. I will do it in a minute because it's really important for my CSS. But right now, I'm just putting things on the page as I see fit. So I'm going to go to plugins. I can also choose run last plugin, which gives me a nice shortcut here. Choose another colorful image. And maybe rename that to balloons or something. Okay, I'm going to drag the homepage a bit down even more because I want to add the footer here. So I make another bar here that fills up the page. Maybe that's about 150 pixels high. And that's going to be my footer. And you see that's not perfectly aligned here. And so one side of that footer is going to say copyright 2019 with my name. And then the other side, and that's basically the reason why I want to show this, is I want to add my social media icons. Does that work? Yeah. Maybe choose a fill color that's a bit less boring. And for the social media icons, what I can do is I can just find images for that. But Google Fonts also integrates, or Figma also integrates Font Awesome. And Font Awesome has these icons for me. So I can look for Font Awesome, find the website, then search for the icon of Facebook and Instagram, for example. Let's do Instagram, you can do the rest yourself, because I want to integrate that in my site. So I'm going to copy. And now, really importantly, I'm going to copy the icon itself, and this is called the Unicode glyph. So this is the thing that I want to copy. So each icon basically has its own number, and this number is set here. And I'm not interested in an exact number, I'm interested in this icon. So I can copy this icon, and then let's try pasting that in. Now, as I paste it in, you note, see if I can drag this here. You note that it doesn't actually show up. And the reason why is because I have to do two things. I have to pick the icon from that list and copy it, but I also have to choose my font here. So I have to choose Fonts Awesome 5 brands, because it's a brand here. And now the Instagram icon shows up, and I can do the same thing as before. I can set the color here, maybe make it a bit bigger, and then align it with the text, like this, for example. Okay, so that allows me to do the icon. So that makes it really easy to add these social media icons. Okay, now I'm styling the footer here, and the home page is going to be aligned exactly to the footer here. And now let's click the preview icon, or the present icon, to actually see how that looks on an iPhone. So that shows me this iPhone here. You see immediately that I have a problem here with the notch. And yeah, so that looks okay. So this is kind of nice that you can drag and scroll around. Okay, so these are just the basics. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to divide this up into groups, so that's actually a design that we can code in CSS and HTML later.